What unfolds when two of television's most influential women find themselves locked in an intense confrontation no one anticipated? Viewers were drawn into a moment that seemed to shift the atmosphere of daytime talk shows in an instant. The scene quickly became the kind of exchange people replayed and debated long after the cameras stopped rolling. The studio buzzed with anticipation, yet no one could have predicted how rapidly the discussion would spiral into something far more dramatic than a routine interview. Bright lights poured over the well-known set as the panelists settled into their familiar seats around the signature table. Papers were straightened, microphones adjusted, and the audience murmured with excitement. Joy Behar slid her glasses into place and organized her notes with the ease of a veteran who had spent years navigating live television. Still, there was a strange tension hanging in the air, an unspoken sense that the morning carried a different kind of energy. Crew members exchanged subtle glances, unable to explain why the environment felt unusually charged before the show had even fully begun. The announcer's voice rang out, introducing a guest whose reputation alone commanded attention across the entertainment world. Applause thundered as Oprah Winfrey stepped onto the stage, greeting the crowd with her trademark warmth and composed elegance. She moved toward the guest chair with measured confidence, acknowledging the audience with a gentle wave. Her outfit, a sharply tailored white blazer, reflected the studio lights in a way that made her stand out even more, reinforcing the commanding presence she carried effortlessly. The room seemed to lean toward her, as if drawn by gravity. Whoopi Goldberg welcomed her with sincere enthusiasm, her tone conveying genuine respect and familiarity. Oprah responded graciously, her well-known smile brightening the set and momentarily easing the tension that had been building. The exchange between them felt natural, almost comforting, like a reunion of longtime colleagues. Yet as the introductions concluded, a subtle shift occurred. Joy leaned slightly forward, her expression tightening, signaling that the conversation was about to take a more serious direction. She began by referencing a recent interview special, suggesting that certain guests had been allowed to voice controversial ideas without sufficient challenge. Her words carried a sharper edge than the polite tone usually maintained on the program. Almost instantly, the mood in the studio cooled. Oprah's smile lingered, but her eyes focused with new intensity, revealing that she fully understood the implication behind the remark. She calmly asked for clarification, requesting specifics about which interview was being discussed. Joy responded with firmness, implying that the example was obvious, and that the issue lay in allowing questionable claims to pass unchecked. The other hosts shifted uneasily, their body language reflecting discomfort as the discussion escalated. Oprah straightened in her seat, tilting her head slightly while maintaining composure. She explained that her intention as an interviewer had always been to create an environment where individuals felt safe expressing themselves, even when their views were controversial or difficult to hear. Her tone remained steady, measured, and deliberate. Joy's voice rose as she countered that personal perspectives should never be confused with verified facts. She argued that offering a platform without firm pushback could lend legitimacy to harmful misinformation. The tension became unmistakable. The co-hosts fell silent, their earlier warmth replaced by uncertainty. One appeared ready to interject, but hesitated, while another seemed frozen, unsure how to navigate the intensifying exchange. The audience, once lively, grew quiet, sensing the significance of the unfolding moment. Oprah replied with a calm firmness that carried unmistakable authority. She emphasized her decades of experience and the responsibility that accompanied such visibility. According to her, journalism was about asking thoughtful questions rather than forcing alignment with personal viewpoints. Joy reacted sharply, rejecting the notion and insisting that neutrality could sometimes serve as a shield to avoid taking meaningful stands. Her cheeks flushed as she spoke, her passion evident in every word. The debate had moved beyond polite disagreement into something far more personal. The studio atmosphere thickened as both women held their ground. The writers continued filming, captivated by the rare intensity playing out before them. Oprah leaned back slightly, her expression shifting from polite surprise to resolute seriousness. She defended the principle of allowing individuals to reveal themselves through dialogue rather than confrontation. Joy answered with a humorless laugh, suggesting that the pursuit of ratings had overshadowed a commitment to truth. Her remarks landed heavily, echoing through the silent studio. For the first time, a subtle crack appeared in Oprah's otherwise steady composure. She questioned the fairness of having her integrity challenged so openly. Joy rose from her seat, her voice climbing in volume as producers gestured anxiously from behind the scenes. She accused Oprah of losing touch with authenticity, claiming that popularity had replaced conviction. The room fell utterly still, the only sound the faint hum of equipment continuing its relentless recording. Oprah then stood as well, her full presence filling the space in a way that demanded attention without a single raised note. Across the table, the two figures faced each other, embodying a clash that would soon ripple across social media and headlines alike. When Oprah finally spoke, her voice softened to a near whisper, yet it carried extraordinary weight. She urged careful consideration of the accusations being made before millions of viewers. Joy's hands trembled slightly, but her determination remained visible, the confrontation suspended in a charged silence that seemed to stretch endlessly. "Yes, Oprah, it is because someone has to confront you about this," Joy declared, her voice firm and unwavering. "You weren't always this cautious, You used to be bold. You championed books that truly mattered, uncovered scandals, and gave space to voices no one else would listen to. Now you're just another famous interviewer worried about upsetting people." Oprah's eyebrows lifted and a tight, knowing smile curved at the edges of her lips. Joy, you really don't understand me the way you think you do. I'm not intimidated by anything, especially not criticism from someone who's built a reputation on shallow jabs and surface-level opinions." A collective gasp rippled through the audience, audible even over the studio microphones, as the sharpness of her words settled into the room. Whoopi finally stepped in, her tone cautious, as she tried to calm the escalating tension. She suggested that everyone pause for a moment, but Oprah raised her hand gently without breaking eye contact with Joy. She insisted the discussion should continue, saying it was time to address the underlying issues directly. She turned the focus back, saying that if principles were going to be debated, then they should be examined honestly. She accused Joy of sitting comfortably behind the safety of a panel, criticizing others while shielded by group dynamics. Joy's expression shifted rapidly, the color draining from her face before returning in a flush of indignation. She denied hiding behind anything and insisted that she always spoke her mind and stood by her words. She added that authenticity was something she still possessed, implying that Oprah had drifted away from it. Oprah responded with a short, controlled laugh that carried little warmth. She suggested that Joy didn't simply speak her thoughts, but rather said whatever would keep her relevant and attract attention in an ever-changing media landscape. She questioned when Joy had last shared an idea that wasn't designed to spark outrage. The co-hosts looked increasingly uneasy, their body language reflecting the discomfort spreading across the stage. Sarah shifted in her seat, clearly unsettled, while another host glanced repeatedly toward the control room, silently wishing for a commercial break to interrupt the rising tension. Joy stepped closer to the table, her voice trembling with anger as she demanded to know how Oprah could question her credibility on her own program. Oprah began to move slowly around the table, each step deliberate, her composure unshaken. She said she had observed Joy's style for years and claimed she often targeted people she considered easy marks. According to Oprah, Joy preferred personal attacks over meaningful discussions and then positioned herself as a victim when challenged. Joy shot back immediately, insisting she played no roles and that she remained genuine, something she felt Oprah had lost over time. She accused Oprah of becoming overly calculated, saying every gesture, every word, and every question now seemed carefully crafted for image rather than sincerity. Oprah stopped and turned fully toward her, the silence stretching across the studio as everyone waited for her response. When she finally spoke, her tone was steady but edged with intensity. She said that while Joy criticized her as a brand, at least she had built something enduring, a legacy that extended beyond commentary. She questioned what Joy's own legacy would be, suggesting that constant criticism alone did not amount to lasting impact. Joy's voice faltered slightly before she answered, declaring that her legacy would be defined by challenging authority and speaking honestly, even when the powerful figure stood right in front of her. Oprah shook her head slowly, rejecting the claim. Rejecting the claim. She argued that Joy had spent so much time shaping narratives and fueling dramatic exchanges that she had lost sight of what genuine truth-telling actually required. The words lingered heavily in the air, intensifying the atmosphere until it felt almost unbearable. The tension reached its peak as Joy looked toward her fellow hosts for support, only to find uneasy silence. The audience, once animated, seemed frozen, collectively holding its breath as the confrontation unfolded. Joy's voice dropped to a low, controlled tone as she declared she was finished, pretending everything was fine. She said she was tired of acting friendly, while feeling disrespected and insulted on her own platform. Oprah folded her arms and raised an eyebrow, challenging her on what she intended to do next. She asked whether Joy planned to walk off dramatically or finally address the substance of the argument. Joy responded by reaching up to her lapel microphone and slowly detaching it, her movements deliberate and filled with finality. She announced that she refused to continue participating in what she described as a performance, and stated that if the program was going to revolve around Oprah, it would continue without her presence. The microphone struck the table with a sharp, echoing sound that cut through the stunned quiet of the studio, leaving everyone motionless as the moment hung suspended in disbelief. Joy pivoted toward the exit with brisk, purposeful strides, her posture rigid and her expression set. The sharp sound of her heels striking the floor echoed through the studio, each step measured and decisive. Whoopi called after her, urging her to slow down and reconsider. But the plea arrived too late. Joy was already halfway across the stage, her pace unwavering. When she reached the edge, she paused and turned back one final time, her gaze fixed across the table. She said that Oprah had once motivated people to reach higher and believe in themselves, but now she only served as a reminder that even admired figures could stumble. Then she slipped behind the curtain, vanishing from sight and leaving behind a stunned stillness that seemed to swallow the entire room. The quiet that followed felt heavy and endless, though only a few seconds actually passed. Oprah remained standing, eyes locked on the space where Joy had disappeared, her face revealing nothing. Camera operators shifted nervously, unsure whether to focus on the empty chair or the unflinching figure at the table. Whoopi cleared her throat, attempting to restore some sense of normalcy, her voice careful as she began to apologize for the disruption. Oprah cut in smoothly, telling her there was no need for apologies. Her calmness was more unsettling than anger might have been. She stated that Joy had made a choice to leave, instead of staying to discuss the concerns she had raised. Sarah shifted in her seat, visibly uncomfortable, suggesting that perhaps a commercial break would allow time for emotions to cool and maybe convince Joy to return. Oprah declined the idea with quiet firmness and settled back into her chair as though the dramatic exit had been nothing more than a minor interruption. She said Joy clearly did not wish to come back and that perhaps it was better that way. According to her, the discussion had been overdue, and she was relieved it had finally taken place. Sunny leaned forward cautiously, her tone tentative as she questioned whether the exchange might have gone too far. She pointed out that Joy had been part of the show for many years and deserved some consideration. Oprah's smile returned, but it carried a cutting edge that caused a ripple of unease among those present. She replied that longevity did not automatically equal skill or effectiveness. Sometimes, she said, remaining in the same place for years simply meant becoming comfortable with mediocrity rather than striving for growth. The audience sat transfixed, hanging on every word as if witnessing a side of Oprah they had never seen before. The nurturing, reassuring persona many associated with her was absent, replaced by someone far more direct and unapologetic. It felt as if long-suppressed thoughts were finally being spoken aloud. Sunny, gathering unexpected courage, continued by saying that Joy had raised legitimate concerns about the earlier interview and asked whether there was any value in that criticism. Oprah let out a brief laugh, genuine yet chilling in its intensity. She responded that Joy's objections were not grounded in journalistic standards or ethical considerations, but instead stemmed from bitterness and envy. She suggested that resentment fueled the remarks more than any real concern for truth. Whoopi tried once more to steer the conversation toward calmer waters, explaining that everyone simply wanted to understand where the confrontation had originated. It had seemed sudden and out of character. Oprah turned her full attention to her, and even Whoopi, known for her composure, appeared to shrink slightly under the unwavering gaze. Oprah insisted that the tension had not appeared out of nowhere. She claimed that subtle remarks and whispered critiques had circulated for years, and that she was well aware of them. According to her, the argument was merely the first time those sentiments had been voiced openly instead of behind closed doors. Sarah spoke softly, almost hesitantly, saying there had never been any intention to disrespect her, and that everyone admired what she had achieved. Oprah raised her eyebrows again, questioning the sincerity of that admiration. She argued that tolerance and genuine respect were not the same thing, and that she often felt supported only when it was convenient. She emphasized that she had used her platform to create meaningful change, rather than simply criticize others' efforts. Behind the scenes, the control room was in disarray. Producers exchanged frantic signals, debating whether to cut to a break or allow the confrontation to continue unfolding live. The moment was unprecedented, and while viewership numbers were likely soaring, the unpredictability made everyone anxious. On stage, Oprah's voice grew steadier and more forceful, carrying the momentum of someone determined to finish what she had begun. She said the real issue was complacency, that the show had grown too comfortable within its own bubble and had lost sight of what authentic, challenging television looked like. Instead of confronting difficult ideas, she suggested, many preferred to perform outrage for cameras rather than engage in genuine dialogue. Whoopi made one final attempt to interrupt, but Oprah raised her hand gently, asking for a moment to finish her thought. She explained that principles were not about being the loudest person in the room or attacking others for applause. True principles, she implied, were about consistency, accountability, and the willingness to stand firm without turning every disagreement into spectacle. The studio remained silent, the weight of her words settling over hosts, crew, and audience alike as the atmosphere held its tense, electric charge. Principles, she explained, were rooted in steadiness and purpose, in creating something meaningful that endured beyond fleeting headlines, in using visibility to influence positive change rather than simply generating loud reactions. As she rose to her feet once more, her presence seemed to command even greater attention, as if the room itself had grown smaller around her. She stated that Joy Behar's departure had confirmed everything she had long suspected about the program. When confronted with direct criticism and asked to support her arguments with more than witty remarks and emotional outrage, Joy had chosen to leave instead of engaging. She had initiated the discussion but retreated the moment it required deeper substance. The audience had fallen into complete stillness, every eye fixed on Oprah, every ear tuned to her voice. The atmosphere felt almost suspended, as though time itself had slowed to accommodate the gravity of the moment. It carried the weight of something larger than a typical television disagreement, the sense that viewers were witnessing a scene destined to be replayed and analyzed countless times. Oprah's tone softened until it was nearly a whisper, compelling everyone to lean in closer to catch each word. She said the most disappointing aspect was not the conflict itself, but the missed potential behind it. Joy, she suggested, had once stood at the edge of greatness. She possessed the audience, the influence, and the opportunity to leave a meaningful imprint. Instead of embracing that potential, she had chosen caution over courage, resentment over growth. Sunny made another attempt to offer balance, reminding everyone that Joy had supported numerous important causes throughout her career. No, Oprah turned toward her swiftly, her expression sharpening as she questioned whether those actions had gone beyond discussion. She drew a distinction between genuine advocacy and performative gestures, emphasizing that talking about change was not the same as actively working toward it. According to her, real commitment required effort and consistency rather than commentary alone. The silence stretched once again, filling the studio with a palpable tension that lingered in the air. Whoopi eventually spoke, remarking that the episode would certainly be remembered as one of the most notable broadcasts the show had ever aired. Oprah's smile returned, and for the first time since the heated exchange began, it appeared sincere rather than guarded. She acknowledged the description but suggested that memorable was only one way to frame it. Instructive might be another. Turning her attention toward the camera, she addressed viewers at home directly. She spoke about the importance of difficult conversations, explaining that progress often emerged from moments of discomfort. Truth, she implied, was not always pleasant to hear, yet it remained necessary for growth and accountability. She reached for her purse and rose with calm elegance, her movements composed and unhurried despite the charged environment. Thanking the host for the invitation, she described the experience as illuminating. Without further elaboration, she walked away from the table with the same confidence and grace she had displayed upon entering, her exit leaving a vacuum of silence behind her. The remaining panelists sat motionless for a moment, absorbing the aftermath of what had just unfolded. The energy in the room had shifted so completely that even the hum of studio equipment seemed louder than before. Whoopi eventually looked straight into the camera, her expression a blend of professionalism and lingering astonishment. She announced a transition to a break, though it was evident that the atmosphere would not easily return to its earlier lightness. Waistcoater lightness. The sense that something significant had occurred hung over the set like a shadow, as if the dynamics of the show had been subtly but permanently altered. Conversations among viewers would undoubtedly continue long after the broadcast ended, dissecting every word, every gesture, and every implication. What remained clear was that the exchange had transcended ordinary television drama. It had become a defining moment, a clash of perspectives that highlighted deeper questions about responsibility, influence, and authenticity in public discourse. The confrontation revealed not only differing philosophies, but also the intensity that arises when powerful personalities collide under the unblinking gaze of live cameras. For many watching, it was less about who appeared victorious and more about the raw exposure of convictions and vulnerabilities laid bare in front of millions. The episode closed with an undeniable sense that the discussion had touched on issues far beyond the studio walls, echoing into broader conversations about media, accountability, and the true meaning of standing by one's principles.